I saw this meme somewhere that says, how are people sneaking out? If I go to the bathroom, my parents ask what I'm doing. Hey y'all, it's me Nina and I'm back with another video for this week. I have taken a break from vlogging as I'm about to go back into work, although now that may be delayed. But you all seem to really like when I respond to Indian media because, I don't know, I'm Indian and I feel like for us brown people we want an outlet to kind of share what we liked, disliked, thought about different things that represent us in media, and they also tend to unearth a lot of issues I may have with Indian culture or South Asian culture as a whole. And based off of your comments, I decided to make an entire video just responding to this. I also put up a poll on my community tab and y'all said that you would like to see a response to this movie. So let's get into it. Just a little bit of disclaimer, I did skip through a lot of the movie, like pressed like the plus 30-second thing a lot because it was really intense and I just couldn't stand to watch parts of it. So that's my disclaimer. I also feel like it's not your typical movie in a sense. Even though it was awful, it kind of did get boring at points. So yeah, that's just my overall disclaimer about the movie. You could let me know if you disagree with me. But I really like the way that one of the people who commented on my other video set up some questions, so I'm going to use their framework. But before we get into it, as always, I like to give a little bit of synopsis if you just happen to click in so that you could still kind of understand what I'm talking about. And this is actually taken from, I don't even know, Google users? Okay, I just Googled it and it says, 16-year-old Nisha lives a double life. When she's out with her friend, she's a regular Norwegian teenager. At home with her family, she is the perfect Pakistani daughter. When her father catches her alone with her boyfriend, Nisha's two worlds brutally collide. To set an example and escape the judgment of their peers, Nisha's parents send her to live with her extended family in a small town in Pakistan. There, Nisha must adapt to a rigid culture that denies her the freedoms that she once enjoyed. So that is the whole premise of the movie. She adapts, okay, now we're going to go into like spoilers and things like that, but she adapts surprisingly well. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of South Asians who are able to adapt really well, but I think for me, I was always afraid, and I guess based off of this movie, we're gonna go to spoilers, you should be afraid, you know? Okay, in the movie, she goes out and she sneaks out of her parents' house to go to parties and things like that, and I did not have the balls to do that. And I saw this meme somewhere that says, how are people sneaking out? If I go to the bathroom, my parents ask what I'm doing. And that was definitely me because my bedroom was positioned right in front of my parents. And I also literally just, the idea of doing that would have terrified me. So yeah, that was really surprising to me that she did that. And she also was so well integrated into her friend and peer groups. And that was sort of unusual for me to see as well because I feel like when you are South Asian, a lot of people can make judgments about you, and I've noticed that in more diverse environments they seem to be more open to people of different ethnicities. Like going to college in New York City, I feel like it was easier just because there's so many different ethnicities and minorities. But I know people who have grown up like me in like white neighborhoods, and they've told me that they've been told things like they smell like curry or like really derogatory things. So I think it definitely is possible to kind of enmesh yourself, but I think it is much harder when you are in an environment where you are so clearly the minority, and she just seemed so in tune with everything. I'm gonna start off with what was relatable, and I was actually kind of shocked by how good of a relationship she had with her father. They seemed so loving towards each other, and I have a good relationship with my parents too, but I just found it relatable to feel safe and even a little bit of a sense of paranoia because a lot of times grandparents can have such strict, unrealistic rules. And I remember the one time I did sneak out was, or the one way I safely broke the rules was, my parents literally never let me hang out with people unless those people went to my church. So I remember I wanted to hang out with my friends and I literally was not allowed to hang out with my friends. So what I would do was, between my school ended at 2:20 and between 2:20 and 3:30 was kind of like a free time sort of. So I could go for tutoring, I could go for clubs, and my parents didn't really question me if I was home at like 3:30 or 4 because they knew those things were happening at that time. So once in a while on a Friday, I would go walk to Starbucks with a friend and get a frappuccino, or I would go to Carvel and we would have ice cream together, and that was my rebelling. Get the whole idea of parents reacting so strongly to things that I think in other places like just wouldn't be reactions. And now I am an adult and I have an apartment and I have freedom because like literally like my parents can't tell me not to go somewhere because I have my own place, and if they ever push their boundaries too much when I'm visiting them, then I would just go to my own place that I have, you know? I'm not bound by these rules or the curfew or whatever. Although even now, like if I come home kind of late when I'm like at my parents' house, they will kind of react a little bit, which I'm just kind of like, I don't live with you. like I'm 27, like I'm gonna go, you know? But yeah, I found that kind of relatable, just like things that are normal to other people that aren't normal to your family, and kind of dealing with that and wrestling with those feelings of secrecy in whatever way. Although I wasn't as bold as she was to do those things, I definitely did relate to parts or elements of what she was experiencing or those feelings of secrecy that she did have. Then we're gonna go into what was too extreme. And I think it really was her father's reaction that was too extreme. I think I would like to believe that if the same thing had happened to me, my parents would have been devastated, really upset. Like I would even be upset at my own child if I found a boy in her room, to be honest. I would be upset. But I would never count the opinions of people in my community more than the value of my own child. And I thought it was just too extreme, this sense of community and shaming and setting your daughter as an example. It was just really horrifying to see that. And also realizing, and I honestly, like, whenever I go to India, I'm always surrounded by family, but I did not realize the extent of the abuse the police have. And I'm interested, if you are someone from a foreign country, if you're from like South Asia, whatever, like explain to me, like in the comments, is it really like that? Like, do police do such illegal acts like normally? Because what the police actually did was force her to take off her clothes when she was just kissing a boy, and then they took those photos and showed it to her parents. Or not her parents, her aunt and uncle, and then her aunt and uncle paid a sum. And what I found really interesting was they were pushing her to take off her clothes for a photo, and when they were pushing her to do that, they said, if you don't do this, we're going to show it, and they ended up showing it anyway. But if someone had said that to me, I would have said, go tell my parents. Like, I'm not, like, I know my parent, like, it's kind of strange because in your hope to defend your reputation, you are willing to further damage your character. So I don't want my parents or my guardian to know I did this, so I'm going to do something worse to keep this a secret. And as a Christian, I really believe in this verse. It says everything that is hidden comes to light. I will try to find the exact verse, and I really believe that. I feel like whenever you do anything in your life, if you try hiding something or whatever, like something you're ashamed of, it always eventually comes to the light. So don't act in a way that you would perceive as shameful. But what was really messed up sometimes in South Asian culture is things that aren't always shameful are portrayed as shameful. And someone tell me if I'm missing something, because I skipped through so much. Like, I thought the boy was like the maid of her family, but he was her first cousin. And then they said, like, her father came back to, like, you know, because her aunt was like, I'm not dealing with this. And her father said, oh, just let him marry her, you know? And I don't know if that's cultural, because I didn't know in Pakistani culture that's normal. And it seems like it was set in present day. So, yeah. You can comment down below. Anyone else thought that was kind of odd? I know, like, back in the day when you read books, like that happened, but I didn't see like a present day example of that. I was watching the trailer, I was like, how does this girl always find a guy? Like when she's in her home country, not her parents' home country, she found this white dude, and then she like literally is in a home where there's only one other guy, and then she somehow like hooks up with him. And I'm just like, yeah, that was interesting. I did not relate to that because I feel like, yeah, I'm not like finding millions of people who are like in love with me or whatever. But yeah, so that was the part that I felt like was too extreme, the reaction of that. And comment down below too, because honestly, I realize I come from a privileged place in many regards, having a family that would support me and love me. And my brother would never, I know for a fact, my older brother would not go with my father to send me somewhere. And I like, that just literally like blows my mind, you know, that the fact that even like the older brother was so ingrained in that he was willing to help with that. And yeah, that was shocking to me. And the last question I guess is, what was illuminating? Yeah, I guess there's so many different parts that are illuminating to me, but I think it's just realizing, one, my privilege, because I am privileged to be older. I am privileged to know and feel security right now, and also just realizing how quickly things can be taken away from you, and why it's important to fight and have self-defense and things like that, and to seek out resources. And yeah, it was really sad too, because she had many instances where she was put in like a safe place, and she loves her family, and like your family is your family, so you want to go to them. So when her parents told her like, oh, it's okay, like we are taking you back, it just was illuminating to see that level of deception. And I actually had a conversation with, and I want to shout out a speech I gave, by the way. It was kind of all revolving around this idea of reputation, what people will say, and I'll link that down below if you're interested in hearing that, because I kind of go into the morality or the dangers of thinking that way. But I am able to understand why South Asian culture can operate so much on reputation, shame, honor, and so on, because I was talking to some of the aunties in my church and like listening to them about their stories of how they got married or arranged marriages. I know, I'm like, whatever, but it was really interesting. And we were talking about it, and a lot of it was, oh, I heard about his family, and his family had a good standing, and my family had a good standing, so we got married. And in a culture like that, if your family doesn't have a good standing, then you're not meeting people organically, you're not just talking to whoever. So if you don't have a good enough reputation, then you can't get married. And if you're a woman who can't work or whatever, like depending on your situation, because I know my grandmother worked, but that wasn't the norm during that time period. So you can literally have less economic mobility just because of what people are thinking of you, and you can't continue your family line even if people think negatively of you or your family. So I have more understanding of why that social standing matters so much. But for me, it's interesting that it can still matter so much to people, especially when you live in America. And literally, I remember feeling so free in my undergrad during college, because my college was really big, and just thinking that there were 17,000 students on campus. If one group of people decided they didn't like me, I could go and find another group. And I had actually several groups of friends in college, and I always felt that freedom of like, hey, like if this person doesn't like me, like who cares? You know, there's so many other people, so many other fish in the sea, so many other opportunities and communities. And for me, it's just interesting how, you know, as South Asians, we still can cling to our own people, our own comfort zones, when that can actually be keeping us in many ways in an unsafe place, or limiting us and our freedoms and how we live our lives. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Comment down below, what do you agree and disagree with? Is there more? I just don't know. And I am really curious to learn more if there is more I'm not aware of. And I'll see you guys later on this week or next. We'll see, because I'm preparing for back to school, taking classes and whatnot. So yeah.